The jungle screams. The jungle was alive. Tall trees stood like silent guards. Strange birds cried from the treetops. Thick vines hung like snakes, and every step made the ground hiss with bugs or crackle with dry leaves. It was a place most people feared. But not Jace. Jace was a human explorer. He came to this planet to map the wild jungle. He walked alone with his gear, his knife, and his scanner. For 2 days he had seen nothing but trees and heard nothing but the sounds of nature. But on the 3rd day, something changed. He was climbing a steep hill when he heard it, a sound that froze him in place. It wasn't a beast's growl. It wasn't a bird's call. It was a scream, faint, far, but full of pain and fear. Jace turned his head and listened again. The jungle was never quiet, but this sound didn't belong. It sounded like someone was in trouble, hurt, maybe dying. He pressed a button on his headset. "Base, this is Jace. I heard something. Might be a distress call." The base replied, "No known life signals in your area. Could be an echo or an animal." Jace frowned. "Doesn't feel like an animal." He shut the comm and stared into the thick green fog ahead. Trees stood close together like a wall. It would be hard to pass through. But still. He walked. Each step took effort. The jungle resisted him, branches slapping his face and grabbing at his clothes. He pushed forward, guided only by the memory of that scream. Then he heard it again. Clearer, louder, a voice. It was a woman. Jace didn't think. He ran. His boots slammed into the mud. Thorns scratched his arms. He jumped over roots and ducked under vines. The voice was closer now, filled with terror. He came into a small clearing, and there, he stopped. At the center of the clearing, half hidden, under leaves and vines, was an alien woman. She was trapped. Thick, cruel ropes had caught her ankles and wrists. A hunting trap, metal and vine mixed, held her down like a spider's web. Her leg was bleeding. Her skin was pale and glowing faintly. Her hair was silver and messy. Her eyes, large and bright, stared at Jace with shock. She looked young, maybe the same age as him. Her clothes were torn. Her body was shaking. Jace stepped forward. She flinched. "Hey," he said softly, holding out his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you." She tried to speak, but only gasps came out. She didn't speak his language. But pain was a language of its own. Jace knelt beside her and looked at the trap. It was alien tech, but mixed with jungle materials. Smart. Brutal. "Who did this to you?" he asked. No answer. Only a tear from her eye. He pulled out his knife and started cutting the vines. Carefully. Slowly. "You're gonna be okay. Snap?" Snap. The trap was tough. The ropes were alive. Some moved like worms. He sliced fast, ignoring the sharp sting on his fingers. Then something growled. Jace froze. It came from the trees. Something big was watching. The alien woman's eyes widened. She tried to speak. Her voice was broken, scared. She pointed behind him. Jace stood and turned. A creature stepped out of the shadows. It looked like a mix of a bear and a lizard. Long claws, sharp teeth. It was sniffing the air, and it had caught their scent. "Great," Jace muttered. He pulled out his plasma knife. The blade hissed with light. The beast growled louder. The alien girl whimpered. Jace stepped in front of her. "You're not taking her!" The beast charged. Jace moved fast, slashing, dodging, stabbing. The knife burned through its skin, but the beast didn't fall. It swung its claw. Jace flew back into the mud. His ears rang. His ribs hurt. The beast came closer. Jace reached for a flare from his belt. He struck it. Bright red fire lit the jungle. The beast screamed and backed away. Jace threw another flare. The fire burned the leaves. The beast ran, scared of the sudden light. Silence returned. Jace groaned and stood. He limped over to the alien girl and knelt again. "You're safe now," he whispered. Her hands trembled, but slowly, she reached out, touched his arm, not with fear, but trust. Jace looked into her eyes. Something told him this was only the beginning. Trapped in thorns, the jungle was darker now. Thick clouds covered the sky. Strange sounds echoed all around. But Jace didn't care. He had only one goal: get the alien girl out of the trap and to safety. She was weak, her breathing shallow, and her body cold. The rope still wrapped around her arms and ankles. They weren't normal vines. They moved slightly like they were alive, reacting to her pain. Jace wiped the sweat from his forehead. Hang on. Just a little more. The girl whimpered. Her skin had marks, blue and purple bruises. Her silver hair was tangled with leaves. But her eyes, they stayed open, staring at him. Scared, tired, but full of questions. He didn't speak her language, but he gave a small smile. I'm not leaving you here. He cut the last vine. She cried out, softly as her leg was freed. Her ankle was swollen and bleeding. Jace ripped part of his sleeve and tied it around her leg to stop the bleeding. Okay, you're out. He picked her up gently. She was light, too light. As he stepped out of the clearing, he felt something strange. The jungle had gone quiet. No birds, no wind, no sound. Then, snap. A sharp noise came from above. Jace looked up too late. A long black vine dropped from a branch and wrapped around his arm, yanking him backward. He dropped the girl and slammed into the ground. Before he could move, 2 more vines shot toward his legs. Trap, he shouted. Another trap! But these weren't from nature. They were made. He grabbed his knife and sliced fast, cutting the vine off his arm. He rolled and dodged the next one, but someone was watching. From behind the trees, red eyes glowed in the shadows. Silent watchers. Tall, thin figures in dark cloaks. Hunters. The alien girl saw them and screamed. Jace turned to protect her, but they didn't attack. They only watched and vanished into the trees like ghosts. Jace's heart pounded. They were waiting, watching us. He picked her up again and ran. The jungle floor was uneven. Roots grabbed at his feet. Branches slapped his face, but he didn't stop. Every few steps, he glanced back. Nothing, but he felt it in his bones. They were following. After an hour, Jace found a shallow cave behind a waterfall. It was small but dry inside. Safe. For now. He laid the girl down on a soft patch of moss. She looked at him with wide eyes, blinking slowly. He gave her water. She sipped it and coughed. I need to clean your wound, he said softly. She didn't answer, but she didn't resist either. He washed her ankle gently. The bleeding had slowed, but the skin was red and bruised. It looked like a trap meant for capture, not death. But that made it worse. Someone wanted you alive, he whispered. She opened her mouth, tried to speak. A strange word came out. Snara. Jace tilted his head. Is that your name? She said it again. This time she touched her chest. Snara. Jace nodded. Snara? Okay. I'm Jace. He pointed at himself. Jace? She repeated it. Softly. Jess? Close enough. He smiled again. You're safe now, Snara. But deep down, he knew it wasn't true. Later that night, Snara sat beside him, her leg bandaged, her body covered with Jace's jacket. She took a stick and began drawing shapes in the dirt. A circle, a triangle, a line of flames. Jace watched, confused. Then she drew small stick figures, her, others, and fire. She pointed at the flames, then her body, then made a breaking motion with her hands. Your home? He guessed. Burned? She nodded slowly. Tears formed in her eyes. Jace's chest tightened. They destroyed your village. She drew again. This time, figures with sharp teeth and long weapons. They surrounded her figure. She was showing him. She had been taken, slavers, hunters. She escaped, but they had chased her, set traps, waited, and now they wanted her back. Jace stared into the jungle outside the cave. He had only come to explore, to map the land, to study. But now, things had changed. He looked at Sonara. She was already asleep, curled up like a child holding the edge of his jacket tightly. He whispered, "I won't let them take you again." Then he picked up his plasma knife and stayed awake all night, listening to the jungle breathe. Because something out there was hunting them, both. Beasts in the mist morning came slowly. The jungle never really slept, but when the thick fog rolled in, everything became quiet, too quiet. Jace sat at the cave's edge, eyes sharp, knife in hand, listening to every leaf, every whisper of wind. Behind him, Sonara slept, breathing softly. Her face looked calmer now, but she still held the edge of his jacket like a lifeline. He hadn't slept, not even for a minute, because something was out there. He had felt it all night. Something watching, waiting. As light pushed through the trees, Jace stood and stretched. His muscles ached. His side throbbed from the beast's claw. But he didn't care. He had to move. They couldn't stay in the same place, not after last night. Not with the red-eyed watchers roaming the jungle. He knelt beside Sonara and gently touched her shoulder. "Hey, we have to go." She woke slowly, blinking up at him. He offered her water. She drank, then looked around in confusion, like she had forgotten where she was. Then she saw him, and she smiled faintly. That was the first time she smiled. It hit Jace, harder than any beast's claw. He helped her stand. She could barely walk, so he let her lean on him. Step by step, they made their way deeper into the jungle, hoping to find a clearer area where he could signal his team. The jungle was thicker here. The trees grew wider, their roots twisting like claws. Mist floated around them, hiding everything, beyond 10 feet, but Jace's gut told him they weren't alone. Suddenly, Sonara froze. Her eyes went wide. Her head snapped toward a bush. Jace followed her gaze. He couldn't see anything, but he could hear it, breathing, heavy, deep, hungry. He slowly stepped in front of her and pulled his plasma knife. From the mist, a creature stepped out. It was massive, taller than any man. Its skin was dark and scaly, and long spikes ran down its back. It had 4 glowing eyes and teeth like daggers. Drool dripped from its jaws as it growled. Sonara gripped Jace's arm in fear. The beast sniffed the air and roared. Jace didn't wait. He pushed Sonara behind a tree and shouted, "Run if I fall!" Then he charged. The fight was brutal. Jace ducked and slashed. The beast swung a claw and tore through the bark. Jace stabbed deep into its shoulder, but it didn't slow down. It slammed into him, knocking him across the ground. His back hit a root. He gasped, wind gone. The beast leapt at him. But something strange happened. A loud whistle cut through the jungle. The beast froze. It growled low, then turned, and ran into the mist. Gone. Jace lay there, stunned. Breathing hard, Sonara crawled to his side, tears in her eyes. He coughed. What the hell was that? She didn't answer, but she looked toward the jungle with fear. Not fear of the beast, but fear of whoever called it away. Jace sat up, confused and sore. It listened to someone, that means it wasn't wild. Sonara nodded. She pointed to her arm and drew a circle on her skin like a symbol. Then she drew the beast, then the red eyes. Jace understood. They control the beasts, the hunters, the ones who watched from the trees. They didn't just trap her. They had trained monsters, and now they knew he was with her. They moved again, slowly, carefully, but every step forward felt heavier. Every sound made them jump. The jungle was turning into a nightmare. Trees looked like claws. Fog twisted like ghosts. The ground growled with hidden life. Finally, they reached a high rock ledge. Jace climbed up and looked around. No sign of safety, only more jungle. He pulled out his signal device. Tried to contact base, nothing. Static. Sonara sat on the rock, her eyes scanning the trees. Jace sat beside her. "You're strong," he said quietly. "I don't know what they did to you, but you're still standing." She looked at him, eyes full of sadness and something more. Respect, trust, maybe even hope. She reached into a hidden pouch on her belt and pulled out a small glowing crystal. She handed it to him. Jace held it up. It glowed, then blinked twice. It was a tracker, a signal. Her people might still be alive. He looked at her. "Is this what they were hunting you for?" She nodded. Jace smiled. "Then let's protect it." Suddenly, the trees shook. More beasts were coming, and this time, they wouldn't run. A language of pain. The jungle was no longer just wild. It had become a war zone. Jace and Sonara ran through the thick vines, hearts pounding, breath sharp and short. Behind them, heavy footsteps crushed leaves and snapped branches. The beasts were chasing again, but this time they were not alone. The hunters were coming too. Jace could feel it in his chest. The fear wasn't just his own, it was Sonara's too. She had seen this before, felt this fear before. He could see it in her trembling hands, and the way her eyes scanned everything with panic. They stopped beside a fallen tree to catch their breath. "We need shelter," Jace whispered. Sonara pointed forward, toward a dark ridge. There was a narrow opening between the rocks. Jace nodded and helped her climb. Inside, the air was cold and damp. The cave was tight, barely enough for 2 people. But it was hidden, and that was all that mattered. Jace pulled out his small light and turned it on. Sonara leaned against the wall, holding her injured leg. She was silent, too silent. Jace noticed her breathing change. She was trying not to cry, but her body shook. "Hey," he said gently. "You're safe now." But she wasn't listening. Her eyes were far away, locked in memory, trapped in something deeper. He touched her arm softly. "What did they do? To you?" She finally looked at him, and then did something strange. She took a sharp stone from the ground and began drawing on the cave wall. Symbols, shapes, pictures. She was telling her story, in pictures. The first symbol, her village, peaceful, full of light. Then, the next, fire, spears, ships in the sky. Then, dark hands grabbing small bodies, screams. Then, cages. Jace sat still, eyes wide. She was showing everything. What no words could describe. She had been taken. Her family gone, her people destroyed, her body chained, her freedom stolen. Then she drew herself, alone, escaping, running barefoot in the night. Then, the trap, the final symbol. Jace, his jacket, his knife, his hand reaching toward her. And then she stopped. She dropped the stone. Her hand shook. Her eyes filled with tears. Jace looked at the wall again. No translation needed. Pain was a language they both understood. Without a word, he took off his glove and placed his hand over hers. Not to comfort her like she was weak, but to remind her she wasn't alone anymore. She looked at him, confused for a second. Then, she did something that surprised him. She leaned forward and rested her head on his shoulder, just for a moment. And Jace let her stay there. Because in that moment, the silence spoke louder than screams. Time passed. They stayed inside the cave while the rain began to fall outside. Lightning flashed in the distance. The beasts didn't like rain, but the hunters, they never stopped. Jace checked his signal device again. Still dead. No help was coming. He turned to Sonara. "You said your people, they had tech, right? Could this tracker crystal bring them back?" She thought for a second, then nodded, but her face was unsure. Then she picked up the glowing crystal again and placed it between them. It blinked once, twice. Then nothing. She looked down. Lost hope. Suddenly, thunder cracked and Jace heard it. A roar, close. Not an animal. A hunting call. The kind warriors used to signal each other. They'd found them. Jace grabbed his gear and helped Sonara to her feet. We run now, or we die here. She didn't ask questions. She just nodded. But as they stepped out of the cave, something strange happened. The crystal in her hand began blinking fast. Fast. Faster. It was sending a signal. Her people. Someone was listening now. But the jungle wasn't going to let them escape so easily. As they moved through the vines, shadows moved around them. Hunters in black armor, tall, silent, eyes glowing red, and in front of them, a beast, bigger than the last. It sniffed the air, growled deep, and then it spoke, not in words but in sound. Controlled, obeying, it was trained. A weapon. Jace stepped in front of Sonara again. You want her? You go through me. He held up his knife. Sonara stepped beside him. She didn't have a weapon, but her eyes, they burned with fire now. She wasn't just a victim anymore, and Jace? He wasn't just a wanderer. Together, they were something new, and the jungle was about to learn that pain can also speak in fire. The trap was a bait the beast didn't charge. Not yet. It stared at Jace and Sonara, growling low, its chest rising with every breath. Its handler, a tall alien hunter in black armor, stood behind it with no emotion on his face, just cold eyes, watching. Jace tightened his grip on the plasma knife. His heart beat faster, the beast's muscles tensed. One wrong move, and they'd both be dead. But the beast didn't move, not because it was scared, because it was waiting for a signal. Then the realization hit Jace like a punch to the gut. This isn't a hunt, he whispered to Sonara. It's not about food or revenge. Sonara looked at him confused. This is a message. Suddenly 3 more hunters appeared from the trees, silent, weapons in hand. They didn't attack, they surrounded. They herded, like wolves guiding. Sheep, one of them dropped something at Jace's feet. A device, it blinked blue, then showed a hologram, a map. And on that map, a single red dot blinked. Them. Jace's blood ran cold. They let you escape, he said softly. They let you run. Because you're the bait. Sonara's eyes widened. They weren't hunting you, he continued. They were hunting whoever would help you. She stepped back, horror rising in her throat. Jace stared at the blinking dot. You weren't the only trap. He was the real target. The lead hunter raised his hand. The beast stepped forward. Jace braced himself. But just then, a high-pitched hum echoed through the jungle. The tracker crystal in Sonara's hand lit up bright green. The hunters paused. The beast stopped. Sonara looked down in shock. The crystal began floating slightly, energy swirling around it. The jungle air changed. The vines trembled, the mist pulled back, and from above a light pierced the trees. A ship. Sleek. Silent. Alien, but not like the hunters. This was her people. Someone had answered the signal. The hunters looked up. They began to retreat. Fast. As if they feared. What was coming? The beast snarled, confused. The lead hunter grabbed something from his belt and pressed it. Suddenly, boom, an explosion behind them. Trees fell. Fire flashed. Smoke covered everything. They were trying to erase all signs. Even her. Jace grabbed Sonara's hand. Move! They ran through the smoke, dodging burning trees and falling debris. The air choked their lungs. The heat stung their eyes. The ship above opened its hatch, light beaming down. But it was still too far. Behind them, the beast roared again. This time, it was not waiting. It charged through the fire. Straight at them. Jace pushed Sonara forward. Go, don't stop! He turned and faced the beast. It leapt at him, claws out. He rolled and stabbed upward, slashing its belly. The plasma burned its skin. It howled in pain. Jace got up, panting. His arm was bleeding, but he didn't care. He turned to run, but his foot caught a root. He fell hard. The beast turned again. It was over. Then, a flash of blue light struck the beast's side. It howled again, and fell. Dead. Jace looked up. A figure in silver armor dropped from the ship above. Another alien, but this one wore the mark Sinara had drawn on the cave wall. Her people. More soldiers landed, quick and silent. They surrounded Jace and helped him up. One of them rushed to Sinara. She cried out and hugged them. It was her sister. Jace stood back, watching them reunite. For the first time, Sinara didn't look afraid. She looked free. She turned and ran back to him. Threw her arms around him. He stiffened for a second, then smiled, wrapping one arm around her. "You're safe now," he whispered. But she pulled back and looked in his eyes. "No," she said, voice soft, broken but real. "You are not safe." Jace frowned. She pointed to the jungle. "They still hunt." She placed her hand over his heart. "They want you." The trap wasn't over. It had just begun. Human rage, alien tears. The alien soldiers formed a circle around Sinara and Jace, weapons drawn, eyes sharp. The jungle still burned in places behind them, but this team moved like shadows, quiet, trained, efficient. They weren't just rescuers. They were warriors. Sinara held Jace's arm tightly as she led him into the ship. She kept looking back, scared someone might appear from the trees again. But Jace? He wasn't afraid anymore. He was angry. Inside the ship, the doors sealed shut. Cool air blew through the vents. The lights were soft and blue. Technology hummed. Sinara's people examined her wound, speaking in their strange tongue, voices full of relief. One soldier approached Jace. He was older, wore a cape, had silver marks on his forehead. "Human," he said in a deep voice. "You are the reason they came." Jace narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" The soldier showed him a hologram. Jace's face was displayed on a screen marked red. "Your DNA, your code. They want it." Jace stepped back. "What? Why?" The soldier didn't answer. He looked at Sinara instead. She lowered her eyes. Jace turned to her. "You knew?" She shook her head slowly. "Not at first." Then she stepped forward, tears in her eyes, and she told him slowly, in broken English, how humans were once believed extinct in this part of the galaxy, how Jace's appearance shocked even the hunters, how his blood held something ancient, something powerful. "They want to use you. To build more." "More what?" She looked away. "More hunters." Silence filled the room. Jace clenched his fists. "They wanted me to rescue you," he said. "Because they knew I'd come. Because I'm human." Sinara nodded. "You feel. You help. You protect. That is what they tested." He turned to the soldier. "So they used her pain to lure me in." "Yes," the soldier replied. "But they didn't expect you to fight back." Jace stood alone at the ship's window, watching the jungle burn far below. His fists still clenched, his jaw tight. He thought of her scream in the dark, her broken leg, the trap, the tears. All for what? To draw out a man who still believed in mercy. Later, in the ship's medbay, he found Sinara sitting alone. She was cleaned up, bandaged, and wearing new clothes, light armor from her people. She looked strong, ready to fight. But her eyes, they were red, tears still fresh. He sat beside her. She didn't speak. She just turned her hand, opening her palm. He placed his hand in hers, quietly, gently. No words. Then she finally whispered, "I thought I was just a tool, Bait. I was ready to die. Jace looked at her. You were never bait to me. A tear slid down her cheek. You were the one I chose to save. Suddenly, alarms blared. The ship shook. Emergency breach. Someone yelled. Jace jumped to his feet. Outside the window, another ship appeared. Black, wide, like a flying beast. It opened fire on them without warning. The hunters were back. They weren't done yet. Jace grabbed a weapon from a wall panel. Get her to safety. But Snara stood beside him. No, I fight too. He looked at her. This woman he once found broken in a trap. Now she stood like a warrior. No more running, she said. They ran to the lower deck, where alien soldiers battled invaders in the corridors. Jace fought beside them, blade in hand, heart full of rage. Not just for himself. For her. For every scream. Every trap. Every tear. Snara fought beside him with a spear made of light. She moved fast, graceful, angry, and when one of the hunters tried to grab her again, she didn't scream. She stabbed him in the chest. Together, they cleared the ship. Smoke filled the halls. Bodies lay still. The leader of the hunters tried to flee in a pod. Jace chased him down. He didn't say a word. He pulled the hunter out and ended it, with fire in his eyes and pain in his fists. Back on the main deck, Sinara watched him return. Blood. On his shirt, cuts on his face, but he was still standing. He looked at her, breathless. She ran to him, held him tight. And this time, she was the one protecting him. Her last word was, home. The smoke finally cleared. The jungle below was silent again, not from peace, but from exhaustion. Fires had burned the trees. Beasts had fled. The hunters were gone, or dead. Jace stood at the ship's edge, looking out the open ramp. His shirt was torn. His arms were covered in bruises and blood, but his eyes were focused. Behind him, soldiers cleaned up the battlefield. Snara's people moved quickly, quietly, bringing order back to the chaos. He didn't notice Snara walking up beside him. She stood there, still in her armor, a gentle breeze brushing her silver hair. Her wounds were healing, but the pain in her heart, not so easily. He looked at her. It's over. She didn't speak. He turned back to the jungle. I came here to map the forest, study life, learn things. He gave a bitter smile. I didn't expect to almost die, or fight monsters, or meet someone like you. Still, she stayed silent. Then, finally, she said softly, I was supposed to die in that trap. Jace looked at her, confused. I had no food, no hope. I screamed not for help, but because I thought no one would come. Her voice shook. And then, you came. They sat together near the ship's engine room later, away from the others. She brought him water. He handed her a bandage. They didn't talk about the blood or the loss or the fire. They only talked about what came next. My people will leave this planet soon, she said, watching the stars form in the sky above. We're not safe here. Jace nodded. And I guess I'll go back to Earth, or what's left of it. There was a pause. Then she turned her eyes to him. Do you want to? He blinked. What do you mean? She tilted her head slightly, thinking how to explain. You have no one calling you back. He didn't answer. You saved me. Not just my body, but everything I had left. My name, my choice, my soul. She touched her chest. And now, my people call me survivor. But I call you. She paused. Home. Jace swallowed hard. No one had ever said that to him before. Not like that. Not with that look in their eyes. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. You don't have to say that. I want to. She looked down. You gave me freedom. Let me give you a place to belong. That night, the ship lifted from the ground. Jungle trees swayed as the engines roared softly. Below, the planet grew smaller, until the wounds of war became distant scars in the dirt. Jay stood at the window again, watching it fade. Snara walked up behind him. "You don't have to decide now," she said. "I already did." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not going back." He turned, holding her gaze. "I don't want to live in a world where people ignore screams in the dark. I want to live in the world where someone listens, like I did for you, like you did for me." Snara's eyes filled with quiet tears. "But I have one condition," he said. She tilted her head. "You never call me hero. I'm just a guy who got lucky enough to hear the right scream." She smiled. Not just with her lips, but with her whole face. And this time he was the one who leaned into her arms. As the stars stretched across the sky and their ship vanished into the unknown, one final log entry played from Jace's old recorder. Day 1. Human explorer entering unknown jungle. Mission: map terrain, study local life. Current status: found something worth more than any map. I found someone who called me home. The end.